So, your father's a lawyer?
Yes.
And your grandfather, your uncle. Did you always want to be a lawyer?
You know, I did. I don't think that I ever consciously thought about anything else. I just always assumed that I would be. And I don't know. There was a moment I remember when I've always been very active in Boy Scouting.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a moment in time, sometime I think in the high school years, when I thought I might like to be a Boy Scout executive. And but that dwindled away, and the law took its course of coming to the fore, always, and so there we are.
Did you always intend to return to Illinois to practice?
I kind of think so. I was asked to be a law clerk, given the opportunity to be a law clerk for a federal judge in Alaska. But I just decided that that was beyond my kin.
That's pretty far away.
I really wanted to come back to Grandpa's territory and practice a little law.
And so you practiced with your uncle at your grandfather's office, right?
I did.
Tell us about that.
Well, my Uncle Epler was 3 years older than my father. Uncle had been twice a state senator in Illinois for that area, and he had a great knowledge of the area and all of the bar and the members and the courts and so forth. And there was just something about carrying on the same practice that Grandpa had established that attracted me. And don't forget, I was a small town, small county boy, small schools, and it just sounded to me like I would like to do that. And so we worked it out, and I then began to practice with him. And we got along swell, and 3 years into the practice, and the opportunity arose for me to run for state's attorney. And of course, Dad had been state's attorney, so I gravitated that way, and I ran and won. And so then I began the practice, that plus the civil practice, and it worked out very well. I had a great experience in doing that. And then I ran for circuit judge, had a vacancy. You know, there were only 3 circuit judges in the entire circuit, and they didn't come open very often.
Right.
So I had to run or not run. So I decided to run after I was served this term as state's attorney, but I was also running for re-election without opposition, which would have been slick, but this job for the opportunity for the court came up, so I popped right onto it, and I was got that nomination. But it was a good year for wines, but not Republicans. And so I went down the tube on the election day. So that meant that I couldn't be state's attorney as well because I hadn't been elected in that, re-elected to that post. So I continued to practice. And
Can I just deviate and ask you a question?
Sure
you
enough.
talk about being from a small town
Yeah.
and practice in that area. What has happened, as I'm sure you're aware, over the last several decades, and it's become particularly acute in the last decade or so, is a real shortage of lawyers in the small towns, in the rural areas, not only in Illinois, but across the country. What do you see, what do you think about that, and what do you see as the way we're going as a profession if we have entire counties with very few lawyers in them?
I think there's going to be the continuing tendency to have clusters of firms, small firms, clustered to cover those rural areas. Jacksonville, for instance, is a perfect example, wherein they're taking in all of these counties that are contiguous or one removed, kind of thing. It's got to be. There's just no, and I think that it's already started, and very successfully so.
You know, it strikes me there's an analogy between what you did when there's only 3 judges in the circuit. You had to ride circuit.
Oh, yes.
That lawyers will end up riding circuit in some fashion as well.
I think they do. I think many of them do at the present time. Yeah, already. Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Particularly outside of your metropolitan areas. I think it's just the way of all flesh.
Yeah, yeah. So you did, though, become a successful on election night and become a circuit judge.
I did. 2 years later,
Okay.
I had an opportunity to run again for the bench, and I did, and I was successful and was elected. And
that's where you ended up riding circuit.
that's true. We had 8 counties in the 8th Circuit, and the other 2 circuit judges and I split up the counties, but we all took turns, and it worked out beautifully. Those were something.
Yeah. So what you ran for and were elected a justice in the 4th Appellate District.
I was, yes.
Tell me about that decision.
See, I ran twice. I've had to run twice for every office I've held. That is, every judicial office. Samuel O. Smith, was our justice on the from this area and this district on the Appellate Court of Illinois. And when I was told by Sam that he was planning to retire, I determined that I would want to go for it. Although I thought it might be a little early, we still had to make the decision, and so I did. And Sam and I had been on the Supreme Court Rules Committee together for a good number of years, and I had the highest regard for him. He was from right down here in Girard and Magoupin County. So I determined to give it a stab. And I did, and that's what it was, a stab. But I've had to run for every job that I have held twice, each time.
Except for federal court.
Except for federal court. That is correct. And so I determined to do it, and I did not make it the first time. But 2 years later, we had another opportunity, and so that's when I did, and successfully so. But, you know, you've got to be realistic about these things. When you get into this game of quasi-politics or politics, you have to be a realist. And if you're not a realist, you're gonna bomb out. You're gonna have a terrible experience. You can't do that. This is the political arena that we live in. It's the way of all flesh. And you've got to accept it and be realistic about it. It may be a Republican's time, it may be a Democrat's time. But whatever the case may be, you've got to learn by the experience. And let me tell you, there are tremendous experiences to be learned from losing.
Probably more than from winning.
I think so. I do indeed. So it's been very healthy that I've had to run twice for every job I've ever had. But it makes you so much more appreciative when you do win.
So you were nominated and confirmed in 1985.
I was.
The confirmation hearings these days, at least at certain levels, are quite contentious. How was your confirmation hearing?
My confirmation hearing was magnificent because our two senators were also Democrats. And when I say also, I mean not that I was, but that they got along very well. They were very kind to me, and extremely so, because we had 2 meetings, and I appeared before their committee, the Judiciary Committee, and one of them, one of the Democrat senators, actually introduced me to the committee, and the other one was on the committee, was on the dais, and he spoke very highly of me also. So it worked out beautifully.
Yeah, that's an example of bipartisanship.
Yes.
I suspect is not going on today.
And that has been lost.
Yeah.
And I hope that someday it will come back.
Yeah.
But I don't know. This has gotten so terribly contentious. It's just a shame.
So you've been on the federal bench for about 33 years now?
Yeah. Gosh, it's hard to believe.
It's a lot. That's a long time. In 1997, you took senior status.
I did.
And yet, here you are still coming to court pretty
Sure.
much daily.
Yes.
Why do you not retire? Why are you still coming to court daily?
Because I love it. It's what I do. It's all I can do. If I go home, Miss Rachel will have me underfoot. And that we do not want. We simply, let me tell you, no. She's a wonderful, wonderful gal, and I tell you, the best thing that ever happened in my life.
Yeah.
So, no, I enjoy this.
And as a federal judge, you've also sat by designation around the country, am I right?
Oh, yes. Yes, I have. I have on the trial bench, as I say, in Chicago and down in East St. Louis. I've sat many times. And then on the courts of appeal around the country, I've sat on 8 out of the 13 circuits. And I don't know what my total caseload was, but it was substantial. And I took my fair share for opinion. So I'd come back here and draft them up. And
Have to write into the evening, right?
well,
So, what words of wisdom would you offer to those who are interested in pursuing a career in the law?
I would say that the number one consideration is that you have to be dedicated. And dedication is a funny word. It's a tough one, because in every situation it can have a different meaning or a different twist or a different view. But you've got to be dedicated. You've got to know that this is what you want to do. And, you know, actually a law degree is like a doctorate in common sense. That's about what it is. And if you view it in that sense, you know, it's a great thing to go for. And I've always thought that my liberal arts education was the best thing that I could have ever done, certainly for every position I've held. And I think it's that simple.
Can you speak to the importance of mentorship for the profession, just in a broad sense?
I think it's extremely important. And it ought to be consciously taken over by everyone in the law, because, you know, it's the common string that goes through generation by generation of lawyer. And if we don't try to mentor or help somebody along the way, what use are we? We're ciphers. We do nothing but the rote. And we don't want to do that. You don't want to leave that as a legacy. You want to assist and help, and any time that you can help a young lawyer, whether it's either get ahead or whether it is simply correcting a mistake that is being made, and do it in a decent mentoring type of way, I think you've missed your calling somehow, because all of us have an obligation, a built-in obligation, to do better and to try to help the next generation come through. It's, you know, we don't live by bread alone. We just don't. Regardless of what some people think, we don't. But we don't, and there are no pockets and shrouds. You don't take anything with you when we leave this world. And whatever you've left behind is your legacy. And so I think it's important that we try to look at ourselves qua lawyers, and try to leave some little indicia behind that helps the profession.
You've mentioned legacy a couple of times.
Mm-hmm.
What is yours?
Oh gosh, I don't have the slightest. I don't know what, other than to say that what I've done since being on the bench. And I like to think that a lot of it is simply a carryover. Whether you're a lawyer or whether you're a judge, it's to make the profession better. than when you came into it or than when you left it. And you just do your best. And if everybody does their best and they do it honestly, then it all adds up to a better profession.
I didn't ask you about your tie. Did you receive that tie,
Oh,
which says Ronald Reagan on it, when you were confirmed, nominated, afterwards, when?
I think it was a little after that my sons gave me that.
Oh.
And you remember the old saying, whose bread I eat, his song I sing. That's why I love this tie.
That's great.
Good.
That's really great. I know you are a student of Abraham Lincoln. Tell me what are the important lessons or legacies from Abraham Lincoln that's animated your life and that other lawyers should look to?
Well, the man turned out to be the only lawyer that has appeared before the Supreme Court of Illinois as many times as he has. And this is the record. The record. He's never, before or since, had any attorney been before the Supreme Court of Illinois as much as Abraham Lincoln. And the man was a phenomenal attorney. Mm-hmm. And by any yardstick that we use to measure that term by or with, he exceeds it in aces, spades, and trumps. He just has it. Had it all together. And, you know, I opened my first session as a circuit judge of Illinois in the same room and trial courtroom that Lincoln defended Duff Armstrong and got an acquittal from him in Beardstown, Illinois. That's where I was sworn in as a circuit judge, and that's also where I had my first day in court, in official court, in that chamber. And I've just been surrounded by Mr. Lincoln my entire life. He was really a phenomenal person, just phenomenal. To think that he could come from such humble origins and become the savior of the nation.